Hello friends and welcome to this video. So in this video we will do N8 production deployment from scratch in AWS and no prior knowledge is required to follow these instructions as I will cover a step-by-step process. First we will create a record for our N8N server. So that is required because we want it to be secure and be using HTTPS, and you will anyways require it if you are doing a production deployment. Second step, we'll create our AWS EC2 server. And then in the same EC2 server, we will deploy Docker and Docker Compose. And then we'll create a shared Docker network. I will explain the Docker architecture in the next slide, how we'll be configuring our containers. And then we will deploy N8N and PostgreSQL. So we'll use PostgreSQL as a backend for N8N. And then we will use NGINX Proxy Manager. So NGINX Proxy Manager is a great tool. It's a GUI-based tool, and it will act as a reverse proxy to host our N8N server. And then we will set up proxy configuration in NGINX Proxy Manager. And after that, we will test if everything is working as expected. So this will be our container structure. So we'll have a shared Docker network. So first we'll create a network, and then we will have two separate directories. So one we'll have for NGINX npm, and second we'll have for N8N. And then we will create containers for these two directories and bring our Docker containers up, right? Then once N8N is up, then we will configure NGINX npm and configure the reverse proxy here. And then we will test if we are able to connect to N8N and if our production setup is working as expected. So let's go to our AWS instance. Okay, so this is my AWS environment, and let me create a new instance here. I will name it as N8N, and we will use Ubuntu for this deployment. Ubuntu 22.04 I believe should be good. Okay, the stable version LTS, and then in the instance type you can use micro. I believe that should work fine, but I prefer to use a small, so that will be a little more resources and it will be a bit faster. And then let me select my key pair here. And in the network setting, right, allow SSH traffic is there. So SSH anyways has to be allowed because we will be doing the configuration using SSH. Apart from it, we also need to allow HTTPS and HTTP. And then we also need a couple of more ports, right? So our NGINX npm will be working on port number 81, right? So we need to allow port 81 here. So I'll just say 81, and here I'll say 0000. Okay, and then for our N8N testing, right? Once N8N is set up, we want to see if it's working properly. So there is a port called 5678. That's what we have configured for N8N. And let me select the CIDR block. Let it be any, right? Storage, I will leave it to 8 GB. But if you are doing a production deployment, it's always a good idea to increase this storage space. And let me go ahead and launch this instance. Okay, and like I said, we need to have a record hosted. So what I have did is I have already created a record here. So let me go to advanced DNS, and you will be able to see the record. So whichever domain you have, like my domain is securityfocal.com. What I have did is I have created a record here. And this record I have pointed to my AWS Elastic IP address. So you need to take a Elastic IP address from AWS first, and then you need to create a record to map it with your FQDN. So our FQDN will be n8n.securityfocal.com. Okay, if you still have any questions around it, just leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Now our instance should be up. So we'll come back here. Okay, let me just refresh this one. Okay, N8N is running. Great. Now we will go to our Elastic IP address, and we will assign Elastic IP to this particular server, right? So I'll say assign, and then I'll say associate Elastic IP. And here I will choose my N8N instance, and I'll say associate. Our elastic IP is associated. Now I'll use putty to connect to this one, and I have saved this configuration here. What you can do is I will say N8N here so that it goes to our elastic IP address, and I'll click on open. Okay, we are connected to our server now. We are inside the server, right? So first step that we will do is we will do an update. So I'll say sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade hyphen y. So that will basically update all the packages, and that is required because many of these packages may be obsolete. They may be having vulnerabilities. So it's always a good idea to update the Linux system first before we move forward. So again, N8N has some documentation, and it's a very recent documentation. But the challenge is, even if you follow the documentation, many times you will get stuck with some or the other error, right? So that's where I have came up with the idea for this video. And before you move forward, I would request you to please like this video. It takes like half a day's hard work to bring this video for you. So please like us. That will help increase our reach, and I am very sure that this is going to save hours of your life. So that's going to take maybe a few more moments. We are at 90% now. Next, what we will be doing is we will be deploying Docker on this server, right? So this is the KB link from Docker itself, and I will leave a link of this in the description. So that's actually pretty straightforward, and it's a new server. So we'll do the step one by one once the update is done. Okay, it's like 92%. Meanwhile, I'll just copy this command to the clipboard. Okay, so service restart is done, and we can get started with the process of deploying Docker. So once again, we'll update, and then we'll install CS certificates and curl. If they are not already there, they will get installed. Then we'll do sudo install -m and then 755-d keyrings. So basically, we are deploying keyrings. And let me just copy this command here. Docker AST sudo chmod d+r and then docker AST. And now we will add the repository to apt store. If you're not able to understand what is happening, that's okay. I mean, you need not actually go deeper into Docker at this moment, at least. And then again, we are basically adding the JPG key, and we are updating the packages. And then to install the latest version of Docker, I will use this command. I, of course, want to continue. And once Docker is installed, right, you can verify this by running this command, sudo docker run hello world. So it will pull the hello world image from the Docker store. So let me just hit enter. And yeah, so unable to find image locally. And then it's pulling from the library, and we can see this message, right? Hello from Docker. So that means our installation is working properly. One more step I recommend is that we want to run Docker as a non-root user. So to do that, we can just add the user to the Docker group. So Docker group will automatically get created with our previous steps. And what we need to do is we'll just say sudo usermod ag docker user, right? So we are good. What we need to do is we now need to disconnect and reconnect. So what I will do is I'll just duplicate this session here, and yeah, okay. So let me just go back to, yeah. So we'll just duplicate this session here, and let me just do it again. And we can exit from the previous session. Right. So we are good with Docker, right? Now let's go to the next step. So I have created Docker Compose for N8N as well as for NGINX NPM. So I've made some minor changes. Let's just have a quick look at the Docker Compose file. So here you can specify which version of the image you want to install. And if you are doing a production deployment, it's critical because you just don't want any random versions to be used. They may have vulnerabilities, or maybe you just want to run N-1 version, right? So choose your versions wisely. And then you can see the port for N8N image. So that's 5678. That's what we'll be using. This is an optional parameter of secure cookie. I have added it because otherwise our initial testing may give some issues. And then I have made some tuning and changes into this docker.compose to make it better. And then here we are telling it to use N8N network, right? So both of these containers will be using N8N networks. Okay, and then we also have .env file to go with this YML file, and here you can see various usernames and password, right? So please make sure that you change all these values, right? And then this N8N host and webhook URL value, right? You can see it's set to n8n.securityfocal.com, and webhook URL is also n8n.securityfocal.com. So make sure you change it to your domain name and your FQDN, right? Okay, so next what we will do is let's go back to our system. Let me clear this to have a clean screen, and let's see where we are in the system. So we are into our home directory. And as per the structure that we talked about, right? So we'll be creating two separate directories. Rather, what we can also do is we can clone the repositories just like this. So what I'll do here is I'll clone the repositories. So it will help reduce the steps here. So first I will clone this N8N repository, and we'll bring N8N up. And then, so here is the link, right? I will anyways leave it in the description. So I'll just say git and then clone. And then I will put this link here. Okay, so our git is cloned. Similarly, what we will also do is I will go to this NGINX npm, and I'll also clone this one, right? So I'll say git and then clone, and then yeah, this one is also done. And then now see, so we should be able to see two directories here. So before we bring our containers up, we will create the Docker network here. And to use that, we will use Docker network command. So Docker network create N8N-network. And I'll just hit enter. So if you see a code like this, that means our command is successful. Now we will go to the N8N directory, and we will bring the container up. So to do that, we will use the command docker compose -f, and then the name of our Docker file. So if you want to check the name, you can just do ls-al, and it's docker-compose.n8n.yml. So now let me bring the container up. I'll say docker compose -f, and then I'll put the name of the file, and then up, and then -d. That's it, and I'll hit enter. So it's pulling our images, and it will set up our container very shortly. So it may take time depending on your internet speed. Since we have set it up in AWS, that should be pretty quick. Okay, Postgres is pulled, which is our backend. And yeah, so it's showing that all the containers are created. Now, if you want to see the logs, you will say docker logs, and then if you want to see the logs of N8N container, you can say just N8N, right? So here, let's see. Okay, so N8N is ready on port 5678, and it's just migrating some things, which is fine. So Docker logs N8N are right. So yeah, so it's up, right? And we should be able to connect to this one. And to do that, okay, before that, if you want to see what are the Docker images that are currently running, you can just say Docker hyphen PS, and you can see two containers. So one is our N8N container, and second is our Postgres container for N8N. Now we can try to connect to this one from our browser, and to do that, what I'll do is I'll put http s colon slash slash, and then I'll say N8N. So you should have your FQDN here, right? That you have to put. Now it's currently not HTTPS, so it will be on HTTP, and I'll say colon, and remember our original port for N8N is 5678. So I'll just say 5678, and we are able to see this page, which means our deployment of N8N is successful. So that's good, but we still have to set up our NGINX npm. So we'll just minimize this one and go back to our system. Let me just clear everything here, and we are currently in the N8N directory. So let me come out of this one. And what I'll do is I'll go to my NGINX directory. So let's see what's the name of the directory, and it's NGINX-npm. And I'll say cd NGINX-npm. So we have cloned both these repositories from our GitHub links. Now we will set up our NGINX container. So let's just do a ls again, and then I am in my home directory, and I can see this NGINX-npm directory that we cloned from GitHub. So what I'll do is let's go inside it, and let's again check what files are there. And ic.env as well as our NGINX is there, compose file. So what we'll do is we'll bring up this container now, and to do that we'll do docker compose -f, and then I'll put the file name here, and then I'll say up and then -d, and let me hit enter. So it's pulling the NGINX Proxy Manager containers and MariaDB. So MariaDB we are using as the database for NGINX container. And of course, you can go here in the repository, and you can check the content of this file, right? Again, these passwords are there in the .env file. So we can see there are two containers here. One is the MariaDB we are using, and second will be the npm itself. And we have got our .env file here. And in the .env file, we have defined the password. So make sure you change all these passwords for any kind of production deployment. Let's now go back to our system, and I see it's started, right? So if I want to see the logs, I'll say docker logs NGINX npm, and yeah, it doesn't show any error. So that means we should be good, Bradley. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll try to open the npm now. And to do that, what we'll do is http :// because again, it's not secure yet. It's on port 81 port, and then I'll hit enter, right? So you will get this interface. So default username is admin@example.com, and default password is change me, all small letters, right? So let me just hit sign in, and it will ask you to change this information. Let me just change this. I'll say Kumar, and then AS, and then Kumar at securityfocal.com, and save it. Then it'll ask me to change the password. So default password is change me, all small letters, that I'll change with the password of my preference. So, and then I'll save this. Now we will create the proxy host here. So I'll click on host and then proxy host and then add proxy host. And our domain name will be N8N dot securityfocal.com, right? So we have created a record for this one. Now it's important to allow port 80 because Let's Encrypt, when it creates the certificate, it will pull on port 80, right? So make sure you have configured the firewall policy in line to the way I have mentioned. Now we need to have the IP address, the private IP address basically of this system. And to check this, we'll just go to our instance, and in the details section we can see the private IP address. So the private IP address is 172.31.41.240. So we'll just put it here, and you remember our port, that is 5678, right? This is the port for npm. So make sure you enable WebSocket support, and you can also choose to block common exploits. And then we need to go to SSL section. So you will see SSL certificate as none. We want our proxy manager to request a new certificate, and then you can also choose to force SSL and support HTTP version 2. And then you need to define your email address here, and then select I agree to Let's Encrypt terms of service and hit save. So it's doing a lot of work in the backend, but all heavy lifting will be transparent to you, and within few seconds we should be good to go. So basically our N8N will come on port 443. So through HTTPS we should be able to access N8N now. So let me just close this window, and let's see if we are able to reach to our N8N now. So I'll say HTTPS n8n.securityfocal.com, and you can see we are able to connect to N8N on port 443, right? So that is the secure port. So you can close maybe port 81 if you don't want to publish NGINX over internet, and if required you can reopen, and then port 5678 anyways you should close from the public. So here I'll enter my basic information. So I'll just say my name, Kumar, yes, and then I'll put a password here, and this is an optional thing. So for now I'll not select, and I'll click on create, and then we are inside N8N, right? So I'll not go beyond this point because I believe you will have some idea about N8N, and I am also planning to do some other educational videos for N8N. But this is it for this video. So friends, like I said, it takes a lot of hard work for us to work on the video. So please make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel before you leave. So what are the things that we have up and running now? So we have N8N with PostgreSQL running now, HTTPS via NGINX Proxy Manager, SSL certificate that is generated by Let's Encrypt, and then we have authentication configured. We have also enabled task runners and encrypted credentials. So task runner is something that is now mandatory with the latest version of npm, and the volumes that we have configured are persistent, right? So whatever configuration you create will be saved even if you restart the Docker containers. So that's it, friends. Thanks a lot for joining us today.